Hello, my name is Matthew, and I feel like there might be some newer people that have found my channel from the Zoom chat that I had with Steve Donahue, and we talked about living in a tiny house, and Steve very generously described me as an expert in tiny houses. So I thought it might be interesting to talk to an actual tiny house expert. And this is my good friend Ben.
Hi.
And he's the person that built the whole house. We designed it together. Ben did all the major designing, but we worked on it together. And so this is my friend Ben, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the tiny house.
I'm ready. I'm looking for the expert right now. I can't find him. I started thinking about tiny houses when I guess I was 29, and my wife and I were engaged at the time. And my brother's a realtor, my wife's a realtor, and my brother found this house that I'm looking right now at the property. We found this property, and it was a really, really nasty house. It hadn't been lived in 15 years, but it's 2 acres of land in a really nice area, and that won me over. And I had done a lot of house flipping with my brother in the past just to make money, and I have toured in a band for the last, say, 18 years, I guess, and I needed work. I needed to come home to Baltimore and work. So my brother was nice enough. He's doing all these flips and investment properties, and I got a lot of experience doing gut renovations. And so we found this house, and the only caveat was it's 500 square feet. And most people would see the house and they'd look around and go, "This is awful. No, thank you." And it was.
This is your house, right?
Yeah.
So it was abandoned for like
15 years. It was empty. There were holes in the bedroom floors because basically the owner would open the windows in the spring and close the windows in the fall. And whatever happened between A and B, it just happened. So rain would blow sideways into the windows, and the floor rotted out. And so we bought the house, and I said, "Look, I'll design it out. It'll be great. 500 square feet." We had already talked about a tiny house on a trailer, but it wasn't really like, this is what we're doing because we really want to do it. It was more like, we're younger, and I had been financially challenged because of playing in a band for so long. And we want to start out on the right foot. We want to be responsible, not be house poor, not get upside down in a mortgage, not do foolish things, not use credit to, think we were doing something great and realize that we were.
So a lot of practical, financially sound reasons.
Yeah. We try to do that, and the reason I've been able to play in a band and live a weird lifestyle to most people, or most people would think that I live a strange kind of life, but that's how we made responsible, practical decisions, and it's facilitated this lifestyle. And now that we have a daughter, and things are definitely more normal now. I don't go on tour for months at a time, and which is fine. It's just a different season of our lives.
So a big part is that you're capable of doing all of this work. So you're able to look at a house that's 15 years old, abandoned, and you can look at it and have the knowledge and skill set to start operating a renovation, a redesign.
Yeah. So I'm fortunate. I know mechanicals. I know all the trades. The only thing I don't really do is HVAC. I do install mini splits, but I've just been fortunate to get a lot of experience hands-on, and I'm what you would call more like a building science nerd, where I study how houses work and how they breathe and how they move and interact with the area you're in and what kind of cooling climate. I just find all that fascinating, and so I said, look, to my wife, like, you might not even want to see the inside of this house before we buy it, because it's pretty bad. It was bad.
I remember, like, the first time I went over, there wasn't a floor.
Yeah. You open the front door, and there was a 4-foot drop to dirt. There was no joist. I ripped all the joists out, and we're lucky. It's a cinder block construction, so The walls are they were good on their own. I could take the whole floor assembly out and just do a new floor assembly. Let's call it that. That's easier than talking about what really goes into that stuff. But so basically working with 500 square feet and cinder block, which adds a level of difficulty because you can't just
It's fixed.
move a stick wall. Yeah, 2x4 wall. Those are easy. You can move those really easily. But cinder, you start getting into masonry. It's more. It's
a bigger commitment.
yeah, yeah. So I basically just worked within the confines of that footprint of this, this existing structure, and I did a bathroom, a kitchen, a living room, and a bedroom, and then a loft that's above the bathroom and bedroom. I vaulted the ceilings at 13 feet, put a mini split in, over-insulated it, all new windows, new exterior doors, everything's new. Everything's just, the whole entire house is 5 years old now.
And it's beautiful. So it looks like a magazine spread. All of the craftsmanship and design choices and building materials. One of the things that we've talked a lot about is when you're building smaller, you can decide on more quality building materials because you need less of them. So in your house, it's what is it? It's like it's hardwood floors. I think it's mahogany, and then you have the other side, which is Italian marble.
Yeah, yeah. So when you build tiny, you can, instead of compromising and just, we're stuck getting the cheapest, click lock flooring, 89 cents a square foot or whatever. If your finances are there, even just a little bit, goes a long way in a tiny house. I did a lot of stuff with auctions. Matt and I did the same thing for his place. Go to auctions, go to these warehouses that you can find that are just, liquidating a bunch of materials. Maybe they were custom ordered. So basically,
we got for my house, all of the windows. Was it $120?
it was something crazy. And then the skylights were like $50 a piece, or
right.
Just something that. And these are all brand new Anderson 400s, and these are great high efficient windows.
And like at the auction, they were brand new in the box.
Yeah.
These aren't things that were ripped out of walls or whatever. And like any one window would be several $100s.
Sure. These three, the three that we're facing right now are probably $380 a piece.
Right.
There's three of them, and we got them for nothing. So there are a lot of ways that living in a tiny house is financially beneficial. It's something that maybe for a season of your life is really practical. Maybe for the rest of your life, depending on what your hobbies are. For my wife and I, it was a really good foothold to get financially stable, to get our equity up. We opened a home equity line of credit against the property value, and that's how we were able to finance the renovation of the house. And it just worked. Our bills were like nothing. Absolutely, it was $120 a month mortgage for 2 acres and a house, and our electric bill was like $40 a month. Like bad months, if I'm running my wood shop, it could be $60 a month, and like everybody, felt really bad for us. But it's for us, it was just absolutely the most positive experience. And I, as Matt has mentioned, my daughter Sloan, once we had a kid, we started realizing like, wow, this is kind of.
And by the way, she's the little girl that I get all the children's books for.
Yeah,
so that's another thing. If anyone has children's book recommendations, please leave them, because we're always looking for more great books for her.
And thank you for the recommendations. She's getting extremely smart. I have to look out. I don't know what I'm going to teach her when she's like 3, But we realized at some point that, we should probably get a bigger house. This house has served us so well. So we rented it out, and we found a house 2 miles down the street. It's bigger, much bigger than I would ever. I just never saw myself in a house that was. I always thought I would live in either a bus, a tent, or this tiny house, and
So at some point, we made the decision to pull the trigger on actually building this house.
Yeah. Yep.
And I from what I remember, like we had maybe a couple months of sort of dreaming about it, like it would be a good idea. But then there was a moment where things started sounding better and better, and I said like if you're down, I'm ready to do it. Like we can actually do it. And sort of our dreamy fantasizing conversation had to make a switch into reality conversations.
When we do this.
Right. Like planning, real planning. We can start with me saying I want floor to ceiling bookshelves, but the planning gets very specific.
Yeah.
We started, Ben started drawing up real blueprints, things to scale, design options. Like you have to pick your layout.
Yeah.
And you need to know that really early on. So the more drawings and the more ideas that you have, the better, because you don't want to be turning left and right when you get into the building process. You have to know exactly what you're doing, what's going to work for you really early on.
Yeah, and when we started talking about it, I was like, this is a unique opportunity for anyone of any income level. I mean, there are people that make, 6 figures a year, and they're like, but they still buy a predetermined floor plan that was built by some, this is crazy because you're like, oh, I want the kitchen here, and I want the loft there, and then I want this closet that has a closet and a clothes washer dryer there, and the kitchen layout and the bookshelves and all this stuff. There's look at this skylight right here above his bed opens. It's a vented, and you can see the stars and the moon at night, and it's just a really great opportunity to watch your vision or your ideas come to fruition, and also realize that you're saving money. You're investing in something that's going to help you.
Something I mentioned in Steve's video, in that interview, was that building prices have been going up. So tiny houses are more expensive now. But something that I didn't mention, but it's sort of by extension, is that since building prices have gone up, and anything that you build goes up. The housing market is up. New houses are more expensive. So even though a tiny house is more expensive to build now, it's not unique to the entire building market.
Right. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Right. So it's across the board, but you also have to think like Matt was saying about materials. You get more materials, or your money goes a lot farther in a smaller footprint or a tiny house where, 2x4s cost a little bit more, but there's not that many of them, to build out one of these buildings. So I think the financial aspect of this it's pretty amazing, and also the creative aspect is, I think, even more enjoyable. For me, I get bored a lot with repetition, so I like doing electrical, and then I like doing the plumbing, and then I like doing the finished surfaces, and
So we've talked about this house, and the main feature that I wanted when we started was the floor to ceiling bookshelves, and so that's how this house was kind of designed around. But you've built a second tiny house.
Yeah.
And in that one, one of the things that I thought was the most interesting feature is how would you even describe it? It's a table that opens up into a piano.
Yeah. It's a 3 foot by 7 foot dining table, and it's a pretty classic looking trestle table. So it's got this long stretcher that runs the length of the table to 2 leg assemblies, and it's all knocked down, so eventually they could disassemble the thing and take it elsewhere or whatever. But yeah, it's on this piano hinge, and you lift the whole tabletop up, and there's an 88 key weighted keyboard with a sheet music ledge, an LED to cast light on the music. There's a writing surface, because he's a composition major in college who now composes music, and he needed a workstation in a tiny house.
Right.
And so basically it's the same footprint as this, square footage wise, and that was his bookshelf, his priority list was, I need a place to work. We also need a place to eat and do other, the things that they do day to day. They needed flat surfaces for it, but then also,
Yeah, so
it's
like
amazing,
when you two had your meeting, one of the things was basically I want a tiny house with a piano.
Yeah, and you go, oh, no big deal. We'll build the whole thing around a piano, and you'll sleep on the floor.
I always thought it was funny, just as an aside. So we started our conversation, and I was like, I want floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. That's what I want. And so we start building, and you start with all the framing, and as it starts going along, it's like, okay, maybe after this step, we're gonna do the bookshelves.
Oh yeah.
After this step, and I think it was the very last thing that we did.
Oh yeah,
Close
drywall,
to.
paint, everything's in. Trim's caulked, and it's like, can we do the bookshelf?
Yeah, well, one of these bookshelves covered a lot.
I've been dreaming about it this whole process. Yeah, and
I told him in the interview, I talked about buying all this for $5.
yeah.
We had a couple of those things pop up like that.
Yeah, this flooring I got at a farm auction, like 30 minutes from here, for $5.
This is white oak.
Yeah, pre-finished.
Yeah, white oak.
White oak hardwoods, and that's another thing. I'm fortunate that I've had time, because I really don't work for anybody. If it's Thursday, this is before my daughter was born, obviously. But if it was a Thursday at 2 p.m, and I saw something pop up on Craigslist, I would just go buy it, and you go, well, the insulation, okay, I drive, I have a truck, and pick it up, and then all of a sudden you start seeing this thing come together, and you're looking at the finances, going, like, we're building a house for this price,
Right.
and it's, to me, like, my biggest thing is, like, I like seeing the people in my life that I love and that I'm close with, like, let's all succeed and help each other do things, and like, let's go. And it's like Matt was in a spot in his life where I was like, this actually makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why it was, when we're spitballing, we're talking, oh, wouldn't this be fun? Like, and then you start going, wait, why am I not doing this? It's all, you start thinking, like, I can't afford not to do this. And the experience of building your own house, I feel like, is
Right.
It's insane. I mean, I've had the opportunity to see a lot of big things change in houses, and do a lot of building myself, but for somebody else who's not familiar, just to watch a wall that's, I don't know how big this is, like 11 foot, 6 or something. When you see this wall stand up, you're like,
Yeah, it's cool.
we got a building. This
It's
is
a cool
building.
feeling. There's a moment where all of a sudden there's a building in front of you that was not there before.
Yeah, it goes two-dimensional, because this trailer pulls in from Tennessee, and you're like, no, my house is going to be on this thing. And then all of a sudden it goes, ba-boom, ba-boom, and there's a roof, and you're like, it's a box, and now it's waterproof. You get to see all this stuff take shape, and then,
So I think we've covered a couple things. It's, for one, I was in a situation where Ben, my friend here, was capable, had the knowledge and skill set to actually do it. It was financially responsible and made good sense. There's a creative aspect where you get to decide how you want it, and there's all the good things about actually living in one, which I think we've kind of covered.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could talk about any drawbacks, things like that. So a big one is building. So actually building it, and then maybe something else we could talk about is living in it, which something like that.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking before, Matt pushed record, and it's like, if you're talking about tiny houses, you already know the negatives. Like, what's really small?
It's small.
Like, yeah, it's called a tiny house. Not for nothing. But I have so much stuff. Where am I going to put it? I'm like, well, what about, if I can't, like, buy a bunch of stuff? Like, if I want to buy a bunch of stuff one weekend, where am I going to put it? It's like, you're kind of accepting already that the reason you're living in a tiny house is because you don't have a lot of stuff, or you don't want a lot of stuff, or you had a lot of stuff and you're trying to pare down and live more simply. And whatever your definition of responsibly is. I don't judge. People do whatever they want.
The thing that we were talking about is like those are not necessarily drawbacks, because those are things that you buy into when you decide to have a tiny house. Like, you shouldn't be in a situation where you're in a tiny house and you want extra rooms.
Yeah.
The thing that comes up a lot is having a composting toilet. So not having, I guess, black water plumbing.
Yeah, utility hookups, but actual septic or sewage or whatever.
Those are decisions that you make before you have to commit to those sort of things.
Yeah, and if you pick a builder, or you're doing things yourself, you're gonna run into these like hurdles and go, okay, well, it's my responsibility as somebody who's building someone's house to go, hey, like, you just have to know this.
Right.
Your bathroom experience is gonna change from what you're used to, and I recognize in America we have things very easy. A lot of things you set out on the curb and it disappears. You flush a thing and it just disappears. I know a lot of other countries in the world, a majority of countries in the world.
Right, it's a different experience.
Yeah, and so we're in this kind of secluded area of the world.
Like, overall, globally it's an exception to have so many of the benefits that we have.
Right. So having recognized that, you go like, well, sure, but you should know that it's going to be different. I would say that the number 2. Sorry, guys. Wow. The number 2 concern that comes up most often is where to put it. Where do you put it? Mm-hmm. Where do you put this thing? I've had more phone calls from people, potential clients. They call me and they say, I really want a tiny house. Excellent, that's great. And they say, where should I put it? I go, you got to call me back when you figure that out, because I don't know. I don't know where you put tiny houses.
In that way, I lucked out in a big way. The fact that the person building the house was also able to accommodate
the house.
Yeah, the house.
Yeah,
it's huge. If the idea of building a tiny house without a place to put it is a really dangerous proposition.
Then you have a house. You have a house that you can't put anywhere.
Right.
That's not responsible.
Like one of the things that we talked about is, like, basically, if you're going to put it somewhere, it's very helpful to have good neighbors.
Yeah, totally. Rural areas are great. I know in the Pacific Northwest it's much easier to go on a smaller lot, or these little they're lots that aren't big enough to build a detached single-family home, and it's working out that people can park their tiny houses there. In our area, at least, it's difficult. It's really, really difficult. A lot of times, people aren't racing to let you pull one of these things on their property. It's so new.
Right.
It could be a good idea for the property owner, but how would they know? They don't know people that, oh yeah, we have tiny houses all over the place. So it is still kind of like the Wild West in this area. That's probably the second biggest concern, other than building it.
And then I guess, any warning or advice for
if you're thinking of building a tiny house yourself?
Building a tiny house.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little spoiled in the way that I've worked for the majority of my life, learning how to build and make and create and design, and that's not everybody. I understand that. I'm fortunate to have a big building full of every tool I would ever need for metal and electrical and woodworking and framing and roofing and all that stuff. I understand that a lot of people would go to Home Depot and go, I need a drill, and I need a saw, and I need some wood. I respect anybody that does anything. Really, you go outside and you build something. You go out, dig a hole, and put a pool in. I don't know. I love the act of creating and creative minds and people. So I encourage anyone to try it, but do it. Find plans. Google or go to YouTube and find people like tumbleweed tiny houses out of
Oregon?
Oregon, yeah. Yeah, I see the trailers are made in Colorado. That's what I see.
Okay.
But yeah, tumbleweed. 84 Lumber builds these kits, which for me, I wouldn't need it because I'm designing out the whole thing and picking the windows and picking the materials. But 84 does this thing where it's like you get comprehensive plans, you get the trailer, and then all the materials just piled on top, and they deliver it to your door. Do something like that. It's really hard to do something that you don't know what you don't know about it. You don't know.
Yeah, if you're starting with no experience, like for me, I'm someone that has no building experience,
Yeah.
And on any level, so like it would not have been a good idea for me to decide to try to build a house on my own devices, because you don't know what you're missing. Like you talked about, like certain kinds of membranes that you have to put between. Like the membranes on the outside of the sheathing, the membranes on the inside on top of the insulation.
And they're different. And how do you know? Where do you
know? Yeah.
Where do you find this information? I was telling Matt, there are contractors that don't know about a lot of these materials because they're set in their ways. They do this one thing. They do it all day long, and that's fine. But this is drywall, and then right behind it is this CertainTeed membrane, which is it's a vapor open moisture retarder that when the wall does accumulate any humidity, it will let the humidity out of the wall assembly, but it won't let humidity in. So it's like a one-way, valve in that scenario. Then on the outside, there's plywood sheathing that has to be taped and nailed on a certain nailing schedule, and then that's basically your baked on house wrap, which is what's called a WRB, which is a water and rain barrier. And then on the roof, there's ice and water shield, and there's all these things that make a system. Also,
like there are things that you were doing where like during during the framing, you're planning out things that are going to happen 2 months down the road. So
yeah, you have to have a lot of foresight into what's to come.
Right.
What we're sitting on right now is a very functional part of this house where it's a platform that was created basically by the need to cover the wheel wells of the trailer. And so we made this platform. It's an elevated thing, but it's also the entrance where this front door is, so the egress is right here. And to make this plane such that when you open the door, the threshold is on the same surface as this flooring, we had to do that before there were walls up.
Right.
We were planning all this out, and so each layer interacts with the next to the end goal of like finished surfaces just being where they need to be, and it's very hard to go backwards. So make sure you take all your steps and really, really make sure that you're comfortable with where you are in the process before you close it up, because it sucks to open walls after you just painted, after there's spackle up and you go, well, we forgot that, and you hammer through the wall. It's much easier just to take your time. Maybe there's some kind of competition now, I don't know, but you're not going to win a prize for building it faster.
Right.
And it is going to be your home, which, shelters, one of our biggest needs as humans, and you don't want to move in and deal with a drip. That kind of stuff just shouldn't really happen. So take your time and reach out. I don't know the internet stuff very well, but obviously Matt took my computer.
The Google Pixel Book.
Yeah, I don't know.
The Ben's Google Pixel Book.
I bought that computer I learned how to 3D model for some project, and I realized I shouldn't own a computer after that. I'm not into that stuff. But you can if you look up on Instagram, Ben Kirk Woodworker, that's my handle. If you have any random questions, you can find me there and send me a private message or.
I'll leave my email below this, and if anyone has tiny house questions, I can send them to you. You can do it that way.
Yeah, and also I'm not like an expert the way that like living big in a tiny house where this guy has a YouTube channel. He's seen far more stuff than
Right.
I've seen. But as far as the building aspect, I understand that. I understand what humans need to live in a space and how to make it comfortable and livable.
And safe.
Yeah, and safe. I mean, this thing, biggest windstorm, you're never, there's no worries. You're not
Right.
sacrificing a comfortable, wonderful life. That's not part of that downside list. You still, it's. I mean, look at this place. Everybody that's watching sees this on a regular basis, and it's not hard to look at. So it's.
Yeah, like it's not claustrophobic. It's sometimes it doesn't come off on the screen, but it's really open. The ceilings are, I think, 11.5 foot tall on the tall end, so it feels much larger on the inside than it seems from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe we'll do like concluding remarks or just like um, I hopefully this has been enjoyable. We got to hear from my friend Ben talk more about tiny house stuff. Hopefully it was enjoyable, but also informative. Hopefully I've answered some questions that might have come up. But obviously I love my house and I enjoy living in a tiny house. And I think we had fun building it.
Yeah, it was awesome. I like building anything. I'm right now. I'm grading my another 2 acres at my house down the street, and just anything like that really gets me going. And being able to drink a beer at the end of the day and think like, look at what we did. We accomplished something. This is unbelievable.
Right.
It's just. I think a lot of this stuff is why I feel great being a human on Earth, is like the opportunity to use my hands and. Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. I love the idea that you can build your own house and live in it. It seems like a impossible task, but we've both done it, and it's incredibly rewarding. And again, if people have questions, don't hesitate. I can't necessarily build one right now, the way the pandemic and having a 16-month-old, and my wife is extremely busy in real estate, but you never know. If you send me an email and offer me the right,
Sure.
I don't know, but definitely it's neat, and I appreciate people listening to me ramble. I'm not really a YouTuber, so I don't know where to look or what to do with myself, but hopefully it made some kind of sense.
I think we did pretty good.
Cool.
Yeah. All right.
That's awesome.
We'll end it there. So leave a comment if you'd like. I'll leave my email if anybody has any other questions or anything that you want to send privately. And thank you for watching. And goodbye. Yeah. Did you wave bye?
Yeah. Bye.
Okay. Bye.